Collier Wise. Helwig. Holland. Humphrey. Price. Sorensen. Ward. Wilson. Mayor Powell.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is minutes. We have minutes from July 16th special meeting and July 16th regular meeting. A motion and a second to approve the minutes as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4 is adoption of the agenda. John, Mike, any changes to the agenda that you know of? Okay. Second. A motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5, under visitors to be heard. First, we have a proclamation recognizing the U10 girls softball team. And Catherine, if you would read the proclamation, please.
Proclamation congratulating the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls fast pitch softball team. Whereas the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls fast pitch softball team won the South Dakota State C Championship in impressive fashion, going undefeated in the tournament and scoring 57 runs while only allowing 15 runs. And whereas the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls fast pitch softball team's winning of the 2018 South Dakota State C Championship earned the girls an automatic bid to the U10A Northern National Tournament in Yankton, South Dakota. In the national tournament, the Flames went 2-3 for the week, defeating the Illinois Crush Tidal Waves and the Brookings Outlaws. This was the ending of a legendary 27-13-1 season. And whereas the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls fast pitch softball team's tournament run captured the hearts and attention of the community, and whereas the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls softball team was guided by coaches Todd Halverson and Dan Hansen, whose guidance and hard work demonstrate their commitment to the team and the Vermillion community. Now, therefore, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, for and on behalf of its citizens, do hereby wish to recognize and extend congratulations to the 2018 Vermillion Flames U10 girls fast pitch softball team and coaching staff for winning the 2018 South Dakota State C Championship title. Abby Hansen, Annika Barnett, Aubrey Moeller, Sienna Mount, Izzy Gilbertson, Katie Even, Madigan Wallen, Maya Halverson, Reagan Lee, Sarah Burbach, and Taylor Roovers. Dated at Vermillion, South Dakota, the 6th day of August, 2018.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there a representative that would receive the proclamation for us, from us?
We do have the two coaches here and the members of the team tonight. So coaches, if you'd like to come up here just for a moment, please, and accept your proclamation. While they're doing that, I'd just like to say it's always nice for the Vermillion Parks and Recreation and, of course, the help of City Council and such to support these programs. Vermillion Fast Pitch is an association that they've went on their own and worked with the Parks and Recreation Department, and we're very pleased with the efforts that these guys put forth, not only for what they instill in the girls and their teaching, not only in softball but in life in general, but it's a great organization for us to work with, and we're very proud to do so. Tonight, as you guys already had mentioned, Dan Hansen and Todd Halverson here, good coaches and also good city employees for us here. So I'm going to turn it over to those guys, let them share a little bit more about their team and for the season for us. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Jim.
Well, we want to thank you guys for acknowledging our girls. They've worked really hard since February, and they set one of their first goal they set this year was to win the state tournament, and I would say we did that with pretty good fashion. And we placed at the national tournament. We tied for 5th, and we did get bumped up into the A, which if we'd have been in the C, we'd have had a lot of fun. But We'd also like to say that we had a great following from Vermillion. Our parents are amazing. Our older girls from the different VFP teams, we've had a lot of fans just come from Vermillion to come watch, and it was really cool to see. We had the stands full from halfway down all the way to the outfield fence, so it was a neat thing for the girls, and I think they had a lot of fun this year. If I could just have them stand up when we announce them, that'd be great. I'm missing 3 of them, but I got Abby Hansen. She's our first base and pitcher. Annika Barnett is a catcher, third base, and she is gone tonight. Aubrey Moeller, left fielder. Sienna Mount, she's gone. She's our right fielder. Izzy Gilbertson, she's an outfielder. Katie Even, shortstop. Madigan Wallen, she's third base and catcher. Maya Halverson, pitcher and first base. Reagan Lee, center fielder. Sarah Burbach, which is gone, she's an outfielder. And Taylor Ruvers is our second base. Next year, we hope to see you again when we're national champions.
We'll be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, but I doubt if you'll want to.
Thank you for the invite.
Under visitors to be heard, addressing the council, persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, visitors may speak on the topic for 5 minutes, and there will be no decision made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by the staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only city council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there's unanimous consent from the council. Questions from the council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any topic that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, any council member have anything not on the agenda? Okay. Then we'll move on to public hearings. Item A, consideration of an application submitted by the United Church of Christ for a variance reducing the minimum front yard setbacks from 25 feet to 0 feet and then from 20 feet to 0 feet for the property located at 20 North Harvard Street. And before you take over with this, Jose, several of us should acknowledge that we're members of the church, but we're not on the board. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that. Okay?
Thank you. The city received an application, as you mentioned, from the United Church of Christ, or UCC, for a variance to remove the front yard setbacks at the off-premise parking lot located at 20 North Harvard. The parking lot is separated from the church, as you may see here in this exhibit. This is existing parking lot area that's in discussion right now. It is separated from the church itself by the east-west alleyway. This here would be Harvard Street, and National would be to the north. The property, the parking lot area is actually within the R2 residential district, so medium density, and then it's also surrounded on 3 sides by residential uses, and on the south side, obviously, by the church. The Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit for this for the off-premise parking lot at their June 25 meeting. There were no conditions placed on the property, and it was approved unanimously at that meeting. The existing parking lot has been in existence and use as a parking lot for many years. Due to the fact that the applicant is wanting to improve the existing parking area by paving it, the city requires that it meets all of the current requirements. This includes acquiring a conditional use permit and meeting all the other requirements that the code may have. The applicant has already acquired the conditional use permit, as mentioned previously. This gives the applicant permission to use the area as an off-premise parking lot and to improve the area, so to pave it. However, the applicant still has to meet all of the remaining requirements set in the code. The Code of Ordinance does not permit any parking within the required front yard setback. This ordinance was adopted back in 2016 in part to try and rectify issues with any required off-street parking being constructed directly in front of in the front yards. The concern was that with aesthetics at the moment and lack of green space in new construction or redevelopments. Off-premise parking lots, as I mentioned in this district, are not allowed to have parked vehicles in the required front yard. Due to that, the applicant has requested or petitioned for a variance. The section 155.100 of the city's code allows for the city council acting as a board of adjustment to hear and decide on these cases, on these petitions. The ordinance sets several factors to be considered. I do have a list of them, and I'll go through them just for clarification and for information. One of the criteria is, does this create an unnecessary hardship? If the variance is not granted, the owner would still be able to utilize the parking or the parcel of land as a parking lot. However, it should be noted that the new parking lot would be much smaller than the existing one. Without the variance, staff estimates that the applicant will lose approximately 20 parking spots. Another criteria is a literal interpretation of the code. We do not have another exact comparison for this situation as this is the only church within the R2 that's currently requesting a gravel parking lot to be paved. However, there are several other Greek houses within the R2 district that could ask for similar variances since they are currently parking in the front yard setbacks. Another criteria is if the variance requested is the minimum. The way that the application was submitted by the applicant, yes, this would be reducing the setback to 0. Could be considered the minimum required, I guess. Another criteria is whether granting the variance will comply with the general purpose and intent of the zoning regulation, and if it will not be offensive to adjacent areas. No. Although the existing parking has existed for several decades in its current state, the City Council has adopted recently an ordinance that addresses parking in the front yard setbacks. This ordinance adopted was meant to ensure that neighborhoods maintain a more pleasing aesthetic look that would be less offensive to the adjoining residential uses. And finally, an exception and extraordinary circumstance. There are no extraordinary circumstances in this case. They're not adjacent to the bluff. There's not a ravine next to it or something of that sort that might prohibit them in reality to utilize the land as such. It's a flat square or a rectangular piece of land. Furthermore, conditions can actually be placed by the City Council on the variance, by the Board of Adjustments. In conclusion, administration believes that the variance should not be granted since it does not meet any of the criteria as mentioned in the code. This is one of the few opportunities that the City Council has to start improving the aesthetics of neighborhoods. City Code requires that a public hearing be held on this item and a concurring vote of 2/3 of the members of the council shall be necessary to approve a variance. So in other words, this means that in order for the variance to pass, 6 of the council members need to vote yes on the variance to pass. That's my spiel.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this time? Jake, please.
This is Dr. Kirby.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Jake
Dominguez.
to me.
My name is Jake Kirby. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees at United Church of Christ. Mainly, I just wanted to speak quickly. I think Jose summarized it quite nicely. I think coming from the church, I'll say there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, and I think that's what we're up against here. Mainly, the idea that this is causing any problem is simply that there's an alley separating the church from this lot. If that alley wasn't there, we wouldn't have to get the special or the conditional use permit nor talk to you. In my discussions with Jose, who I'd actually like to thank a lot, he's helped me a lot in this process, as well as many people from the city have been very generous with their time and helpful for this. And had some good discussions. One idea was to vacate the alley as a possibility, but the city didn't want to necessarily do that per se, and so this is another way of doing that. that gets around that. The idea, I think the spirit of the law that was put in place, or the ordinance rather, is simply to make it look better. So in terms of the idea here, we want to make it look better, and as the church, we're doing a lot of work on our church to that goal. We have the same goals as the city in terms of improving the look of the things that are around us. And that's the point of doing the parking lot. So right now it's an old gravel lot with a lot of dirt, as you can see from the picture Jose showed you. And so we want to improve it, and to do that, paving has already been sort of granted by us. Mainly, we're running into a technicality. So the lot, because it's separated by this alley, is considered residential, and therefore, by the letter of the law, should have a front yard. So that makes sense in a residential if there were a house on it. It doesn't really make sense in terms of what it actually is and has been used as for decades upon decades. And so that, I think, is just a reasonable request that we're asking to pave the current lot that we have. Some considerations in addition for the council to think about is that if we aren't granted the variance, then it's hard for me to talk to the congregation about improving our parking lot when I say we're reducing a third of the parking spaces. So that's not going to improve it for my congregation, and therefore we probably won't end up doing it. And therefore the status of it is going to stay as it is, just because it doesn't make any sense for us to spend the money to have less parking. The other thing is, and maybe my motivation actually for doing this parking lot, just to give you sort of a personal story about it, is I show up to church in the spring months or in the fall months, and it's been raining, and there's a lot of mud in the lot, and my kids, I've spent some nice money on their pretty church shoes, and either we have to get them all muddy, or you know what, let's just park on the street. And so if you notice in the spring and fall months, a lot of our church members are parking on the street, which is legal and within the benefit of it, but we're just avoiding the lot because of its condition. And so I say that in terms of paving the lot, not only is it going to be an improvement for just our church using the lot, but it also will be an improvement for the surrounding residential area in terms of the less traffic on their street in terms of parking in those conditions. And also too, to note that there's a lot of people that use this lot besides our church. I mean, we have events like funerals and weddings, which a lot of people go to and attend that aren't members of the church. And we also have, a lot of med students, for instance, and other things that are parking in our lot and not on city streets and things like that. So these are, we have lots of uses for the lot that are outside of just our church, although, of course, we have lots of members of the church that live in each of your districts, and so I think we'd support this as well. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have, but that's
Any
the
questions
summation.
for
Yeah.
Dr. Kirby? Rich? Oh, Jose?
First of all, when it's reduced to zero, that's not to the curb, that's to the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, that's essentially to the property line,
It's
so
about-
a
yeah,
foot
okay.
behind the sidewalk, yeah.
Okay, and the other one is for Mike. Mike, do you need to know names of who is members, or just the statement that Jack used for the people that belong to the church?
I guess probably forgot to put the names down there.
Then I believe Jack, myself, and Steve, is that
Yeah.
correct?
I think the main thing we wanted to people to know that we don't have fiduciary responsibilities over the church. We're just members of the church. We get to pay for the parking.
Yeah, they might vote against it, I don't know.
Get some extra plates.
And I was going to ask Jose, if this were granted, could we then maybe add some barriers along the sidewalk so that cars wouldn't park over onto the sidewalk? Is that a separate?
Yeah, that would actually be something that we would be requiring at that point, especially if they're going to be parking in the same manner as they're doing right now. We would definitely be asking to have a parking barrier
Okay.
on the National or the Harvard Street side.
Does that have to be a part of this, or is that just understood?
No, that's going to, yeah, it doesn't have to be part of this. That's just going to be something that we're going to be requiring.
Okay. Other questions for either of these gentlemen? Howard?
I had asked you earlier today if you could look up the dimensions of the part of that lot and see if there was a way, because I know to try to stay in with the ordinance the way it is, green space is important. If there was any way we could not have a zero but maybe have a little bit, 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, and still get 3 rows of parking in there,
Sure.
especially once it gets striped and utilized.
If I can have the projector again. Essentially, what it comes down to is the dimensions of the parking lot right now are 100 feet east to west and 141 feet north to south. Right now, these access points, which my understanding is that the church doesn't want to do anything to them for other reasons, they're going to be staying there. Well, that kind of sets my alleys through the parking. This is 12 feet wide and this is 12 feet wide. The way that the people are parked here, and you can kind of see how this is much wider than 12 feet, and so is this. This actually correlates pretty closely to what our code requires. If this were to be a brand new parking lot, our code would actually require a 18-foot parking spot, a 24-foot aisle in between the two parking areas. And that 24-foot aisle would just be for people to maneuver in and out of their parking spots. And this actually correlates very nicely to it. But as far as existing dimensions within the parking area, what we have right now is here, in this row here, you roughly have about 21 feet. Then you have another 12. Then you have about 35 feet here, another 12, and then another 19 feet here. So if we were to be removing one, not a parking row necessarily, but feet, maybe 1 or 2 feet, that would be possible. But the problem that you run into then is that even though I would like to have green space here, that 1 or 2 foot of green space would be then difficult to maintain. I don't know if the church would be able to grow anything in there that would be, I don't know.
Aesthetic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
aesthetic. It might just be a weed patch, a nice weed patch, but
And another
Holy
note, just to
weed
add
patch.
on to it, because Jose and I discussed a lot of different plans. This isn't something we just came up on our own. But on that, if you could throw that map back up, we'd also actually talked about doing parking up in this area, in fact, and there's a lot of problems with it. But I think just to reflect on that is green space, that we're staying intact. I mean, in addition to the other green space that we already have, that's well maintained and gardened and made to look, pretty, if you will. So I guess, again, the letter of the law is we actually are trying to allow these spaces open. That's, of course, just for the kids in the church and have space to play that even the public can play in. That, to me, well, even as a biologist, is more meaningful than a 1-foot strip. So, again, just to say, we've talked about it, actually, and tried to negotiate it, and I think this is the best solution that we can.
I mean, there's, if I may, Howard,
Yeah.
on this map, and I did look at this a little bit more today after you came in at lunch. On one thing that I looked at is if maybe we could have a different layout. So I started with this rectangle to see if I can fit I estimated to be 42 parking stalls in there, in the gravel parking area. So I tried to fit 42 parking stalls if we were to restripe it and pave everything. And even if I actually have diagonal parking, I would still have to go all the way, I would still have to pave everything that they are showing there. I would have green spaces at the entrances and at the exits, but essentially I would still have to pave everything. So besides that, I mean, adding, maybe removing a row or whatever the case might be, that's an option, but that would be up to the council if there needs to be conditions, I guess, on the variance itself.
I have a follow-up. if
Go
I
ahead.
could. Another thought that I had was if we took a couple parking spots out of the center row of cars and made a little island and put a tree in it, using trees that the city recommends for parking so they don't get massive and out of hand, which would add a little bit of aesthetics to it. I'm for you to get the parking lot. I'm just trying to find a way that we can kind of follow the spirit of the ordinance and still keep as many parking spots as we possibly can, because to take it away and take 20 parking spots, I don't think is a feasible answer.
Yeah, and that was something that discussed as well. There is some, I don't think it's impossible, but it is some issues of things like, we have snow removal that, we don't pay for, people volunteer and help with and things like that. So moving around obstacles and even the head parking stones, we have to sort of deal with those. So there are less than ideal solutions. So having to follow and make sure that everything follows the rule, I think having barriers to go on the sidewalk is going to have some snow clearing issues. That's okay. Putting a tree in the middle or several trees or an island or something like that. Again, it reduces parking, and it's not
Well,
clear to
you'd
me
lose
how
a couple
well
parking
it will work,
stalls.
but also it would make it challenging to maneuver around. And so,
Tom, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Jose, remind me, in a residential area, is parking allowed in a front yard as long as there's a hard surface?
It depends on the use. If it's a house,
It's, okay,
in the required front yard, yeah, then that's allowed. If it's an apartment, a fourplex or duplex, then no, it's not allowed in the required front
okay,
yard.
well, so this is neither. But what
But
I'm
the
getting
ordinance
at,
The ordinance classifies as, since it's neither of the two, then it has to follow, there's no exceptions to it.
okay,
You just
can't
don't-
use crushed concrete,
No, yeah.
because you could use that all the way up to the sidewalk, you wouldn't have to do any of this. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you for answering that, I appreciate it. And I very much appreciate your comments and your being here, and I understand that parking is a big issue in this community. This parking lot is also a very valuable parking lot to the community. It's not just off in the distance somewhere. It serves some students, which is not easy to do. I went through that at our church. I want to qualify my comments by saying I'm all in favor of keeping alleys around big gathering areas for fire truck and ambulance kind of purposes. It's just I'm biased on that. I also want to point out that I think in this particular case, as you mentioned, for decades and decades and decades, this has been a parking lot all the way up to the sidewalk. And anything you do to improve the surface is an improvement. Given that this differs that much with some of the other residential questions that we've had on parking, and given that I think as the policy-making board for this community, I think there would be a hardship. Losing a row and a half of cars is a hardship, isn't it?
yeah, unquestionably, yeah.
And so I think,
We wouldn't do it.
No.
I don't know if you call it extraordinary, but I think it's certainly reasonable to leave this as a parking lot. And I would move that with these changes as pointed out, or these differences, differences as pointed out, and the existence long time of this lot, the fact that it does save street parking, which is always full anyway, and I know you can't use probably the lot across the street if you were to purchase it. I move approval.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Certainly.
I asked this at noon, but just to follow up with Jake and Steve here, did you get any feedback from the residences in the area about, solidifying this as a parking lot? And
Yeah, I mean, we followed the letter of the law and put out the public notice, and, there's an apartment building across from us where most of the residents are, and I think they are apartment residents and don't really, doesn't necessarily affect them. But yeah, we've received no sort of negative comment from anyone. I didn't knock on everyone's door, of course, but there's no, and then, like I said before, I think it would benefit them as far as I can see in many ways, so.
Any further discussion or questions? This requires a roll call vote. It requires a 2/3 of the 9, even though we're 8. So it requires a 6 to pass this. So if we'd set the machinery for us, please.
Thank you for your time, yeah.
Done. Dr. Kirby?
Yeah.
What effect does the miniature frog migration have? on
This
the
is a normal situation. I have this concern of a lot of city residents.
I know
The frogs are falling into their window wells, and I'm being called across the city to rescue these things.
Thank you, sir.
This is typical for the wet weather we're having. Pull them out of your window wells and let them free. You don't have to bring them to a river or pond. They'll find their way. Thank you. Thank you.
Item 6B, vacation of right-of-way line directly north of lot. Oh, I'm sorry. I had turned it back on, excuse me. Item 6B, vacation of right-of-way lying directly north of Lot 1, Block 1, Madison Park Addition, City of Vermillion, Clay County. And Jose again, please.
Thank you. Petition signed by all of the abutting property owners to vacate a portion of Madison Street was submitted recently by G.A. Hahn Development. The street to be vacated would be the furthest east section of Madison Street. This is my crude drawing.
I was wondering if one of the kids did that for you.
No, it was me. I can't blame him for this. But essentially, this portion here that's hatched is actually the section that would be vacated. Even though it might be hard to see just because of the aerial, there's actually no improvements in there as far as roadway improvements. We do have a sanitary sewer that ends right there. And then there's also an existing gas line that was placed for these apartments that runs on the south side of that right-of-way. Excuse me. The sanitary sewer, as I mentioned, is actually in the middle of the right-of-way, so roughly 33 feet from the south property line. Besides the already mentioned sanitary sewer and the gas line, there are no other utilities within there. The city will be acquiring a 41-foot easement measured from the south to the north. And that utility easement is actually part of the previously approved plat that this council approved at the July 16th meeting. This plat, I don't know if you remember, but the council did make it a conditional on the vacation of Madison Street. I do have a lot of other stuff brought up here, but essentially with that plat that the council approved and it's pending this approval, there's also the extension of Roosevelt. All of this right away from here all the way up to here would be dedicated with that plat that's sitting in my office. And then this the west 33-foot of Mickelson would also be dedicated at the time that that plat is filed. The reason that the owner, J. Hahn, is asking for this to be vacated is very simple. In order for him, right now all of this is actually zone R3. So in order for him to put apartments similar to these, he would need this space right now. So he's wanting to put something similar to this up here, and then here, and here, as of now. And that's the way that the preliminary plat that was approved by the Planning Commission is depicted. So the access for this development here would first be off Norbeck, with a developer's agreement being signed with another access off Roosevelt at some point. And then if this were to be developed as they're planning for apartments, then that access would be off Roosevelt more than likely, with another one off Mickelson, and the one here off Mickelson. Now, there's nothing saying that if these were to be developed, or this one as well, that there couldn't be an internal driving aisle or something of that sort, that all the parking lots not necessarily be shared, but that there's access between parking lot to parking lot. So if this access here is blocked, that these tenants could actually go over here and use one of these exits or entrances. But again, we're getting pretty far ahead at that point because I don't even have an idea if this is necessarily going to be developed as such. I guess otherwise, administration recommends the vacation of a portion of the street of Madison Street running north of Lot 1, Block 1, Madison Park Addition.
Thanks, Jose. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this? We'll turn it to the council for deliberation. Rich, please.
Two things. First of all, Jose, could you put the map back up, please? Or
Yeah.
with it? Madison, it doesn't currently go all the way to Mickelson?
No, it doesn't. It literally, the
It ends
dedicated right-of-way stops right here. And as far as the paved street, It ends right here on Norbeck.
Okay, I was wondering why you didn't want the whole thing, but that's the reason, it's a good
Yeah.
reason. Second thing is, although I don't think we can put conditions on this particular thing, I would like to request or make sure that at the time Norbeck could be straightened out from being an inlet to a straight through. I don't know the proper
It's
terminology. for
essentially
that.
remove the curb,
Remove the
cut,
curb.
street cut. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Turn to the street.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to convey that. I know that, like you mentioned, you can't place a condition, but if whoever makes a motion, if there is a motion, if they can at least include that in the motion, that way can I take it to the developer and say, we're putting this in the developer's agreement, the council wants it. But yeah, with understanding it's not a condition.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Tom, please.
And we would get that agreement in writing from the developer?
The developer.
If we make it conditional?
Yeah, the developer's agreement would be coming to the council. We haven't even got to that
Okay.
point yet with them, but it would be coming to the council for your guys' approval before they even pull a building permit.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I have a couple other questions. Is 66 feet, are either of these a section line?
No,
Okay, they just happen to be that wide, huh?
all the right-of-way
Yeah,
for the city streets is at
66
least
feet.
66
Okay.
feet wide, yeah.
And this map is different than the one we saw earlier, so.
I have it here too, if you want to
Yeah.
see this one.
Well, no, I mean the stuff we got at home.
Yeah, that's what I
We
mean.
didn't have your new map.
No, I came up with this one at noon.
It makes a difference,
Yeah, it
because
does.
Roosevelt goes all the way east, and
Yep, it would
that's
be going all the
extremely
way east.
important. And as I said earlier tonight, I'm partial to allowing emergency vehicle access into an area where there is a denser population than your
Sure.
regular family home. So I think that's important. So thank you for answering those
Yeah.
questions.
Howard, please.
That easement, that you have a 40...
The 41-foot easement, yeah.
Yes. They can't build over the top of that, can they build a...
No, they would not be able, they would not be able to build an apartment unit on top of it, but they could pave it.
They could pave it and use
Yeah.
it as a parking lot on it?
Yeah, if that's what their plan calls for, then yes, they could do that.
So they, okay. So they could, like you said, they could tie all their parking lots together.
If they want, yep,
If
if they
they
wanted
want
to,
to.
yep, they could.
Would that be something that you would consider talking to them about to
Yeah,
make it?
I have no issues talking to them about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Further discussion? Yes.
Jose, about how many residents live in this apartment complex, you know? Or how many planned apartments do we have
I
in
want to
this area?
say is
Well-
it about 100?
We don't know the exact number of residents, but there are 40 units, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think
there-
there's 40 units on the existing one, and I think,
I think he's building pretty much a mirror image of it.
yeah,
Okay.
and I think it varies in density between 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms.
Right.
So I want to say that you're probably going to be having somewhere between 100 residents in there or so.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Just a quick...
Steve? Oh,
Go ahead.
Steve?
Um,
Didn't look this way.
Jose, could you put the map back up? Thank you.
Magic. Waved his hands and there it is.
Are you concerned at all about having fewer east-west? Let's just say all of this gets built in 20 years or less.
Okay.
Are you concerned at all about having fewer east-west connection points between Norbeck and Crawford Road, for example?
I guess I wouldn't. Even if you forget about the apartments in here, the only east-west portion that had been planned even by Joe back in the 70s and 60s was actually just Roosevelt. Lincoln Street, we do have a little stub here for Lincoln, but that was actually planned to come into Roosevelt somehow. Madison was also planning to come into Roosevelt somehow. And Mickelson, I don't even think Mickelson extended to Roosevelt. I think that actually just ended at Clark. So I feel pretty comfortable. I mean, you're talking about a 2-block section between Clark that would be going all the way to Crawford and Roosevelt, and then just another block and a half, 2 blocks to Cherry Street. So I think we have plenty of space. typically when we talk, and this is a little side note, when we talk to the developers about like this person here that actually has a lot of land, what we usually tell them is that, okay, you have this street here, Roosevelt, has to go from point A to point B. Whatever you do internally, we'll work with you. You can come up with ideas and plans, and we'll present that. At some point, we present it to the council. But in this case, or to the planning commission, in this case, having Madison all the way through doesn't necessarily benefit, because it's just going to end in Roosevelt at some point or another. If it were residential houses, like single-family homes, like Mr. Sorensen has mentioned in the past, then yeah, by all means, we would have to have something in between, just because the lots would be just way too big. They would not be conducive to efficient or financially affordable homes.
Well, that's an interesting point. So the type of development that we are anticipating is kind of dictating.
Yeah, in a way it does, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the development west of Norbeck, you can see that, I mean, Lincoln, you have to have Lincoln in there because you have homes on both sides.
Right.
But if you had a large apartment complex, you wouldn't need Lincoln. You could just dead end Lincoln here, like they're showing, and you could have a large development right there with internal roadway, similar to what they have already, where they have this loop with a fire hydrant in the middle. So it's a private road. It's not public. It's meant for the people that live there. But there's fire protection, and there's a lot of things that we already require them. Not that we could have more, but we do have minimum standards that they have to go by.
Tom?
I realize we're talking about vacating a piece of a street, but on that map, that famous map, that popular map,
Yep.
where is the big pond that's out there right now?
You're talking about the one by Crawford and
Well,
Maine?
No, I'm talking about something that is,
There's a pond right here.
well, that's a detention pond.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about out closer to
To Main
Roosevelt.
We don't,
There's a big body of water out there somewhere.
okay, the only bodies of waters that we have here would be the pond here, but for those new apartments. And then actually, if this is Crawford, which it is, and you have Main Street a lot further south, there's a fairly large pond at that corner between Crawford and Main. But otherwise, there's no other ponds there besides those two.
Anymore.
No,
Didn't there used to be?
no, there still
Okay.
is.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about man-made ponds, right?
No, I'm talking about like when we had that last big heavy rain. There was a lot of backyard flooding, front yard flooding, and
Oh, yeah.
and I drove back into that Costello development that
Yeah, that
there
doesn't
was a-
show on this. I know which one you're talking now, but that doesn't show in this. It's fairly small, but it's a drainage area that just collects water in heavy events down here.
Is it a
somewhere.
wetland?
Huh?
Is it a wetland?
No, it's pretty dry now.
Okay. Thank
So it
you.
was actually pretty dry day after.
Any further discussion? Will of the council?
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Okay, I will. Yeah.
Was there a second for that? Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no old business, so we'll turn to new business. Item A, request to close High Street from 526 High Street to West Cherry Street on Saturday, September 22nd, 2018, from noon to 4 p.m. for a Phi Kappa Theta Children's Miracle Network car show. And John? is that-
Thank you. I'll get it started here. Phi Kappa Theta has submitted this request to close High Street for basically through the fairgrounds property. They are doing a fundraiser for the Children's Miracle Network on Saturday, the 22nd of September. They requested to close that section of High Street from noon to 4 p.m. And it's particularly important if we should have it's raining, that those cars could be displayed in the street, but also to provide some ample area for people to move about the car show a little bit more easily. Quentin is here, and he's been the lead on this, and I think he can fill in a little bit more information for you.
Okay. Welcome.
Quentin Judas, 208 East Cherry Street. As I just stated, my name is Quentin Judas. I am a student at the University of South Dakota. I'm also a member of the Phi Kappa Theta fraternity there. I am also in charge of the social events that the fraternity has. So any events with other organizations that we decide to have, or any philanthropic events. Normally in the spring, we do a fish fry called the Phi Kappa Theta Fish Fry, which raises money for Children's Miracle Network as well. This year we decided to branch out into the fall and move into a more of a different route other than food. We decided that a car show is towards the end of the car season. There should be nice weather. It's September. And we decided that a car show would be nice to have to help raise money for this. So what we plan on doing is having this road shut down just for more parking for in case of the event of excessive cars, ease of traffic to walk around on, because I'd really hate to have this event dampened by someone getting hurt by a vehicle or whatever. And that's mainly what that is. Other things that we're doing with this event are a 50-50 raffle, which I believe you guys will be speaking about. And we'll have food and shirts, and this is all just for a great cause of Children's Miracle Network.
Comments or questions for Quentin? A motion and a second to approve the street closure. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Item B, a request to close Rose Street from Coyote Village to the Dakota Dome and remove parking on North Dakota Street between Alumni Street and South Dakota Highway 50 on September 8, October 6, 13, and 27, and November 10 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for USD football games. And John and Cameron.
I'll get it started, Mayor. I think you kind of outlined the request pretty similar to what I would have said. This is, I believe, the third year that we've done some of the parking removal on Dakota Street. Rose Street's been closed for a number of years to facilitate the game day traffic that way. The only parking that would be allowed on North Dakota Street would be for the opponent's buses, or well, Jose's not here, I can't make a steak crack.
Well, you can, it'll be on tape.
Cattle trucks. Anyway, so the opponent's buses are the only thing that would be allowed to park on North Dakota Street during that time. As Cameron has referenced in the application you submitted, they have been in contact with the Holiday Inn Express. One of the first years, that was a question that they had. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Cameron Wilson with USD Athletics. He has a little bit more information for you.
As John stated, my name is Cameron Wilson, 333 Jefferson Street here in Vermillion. I work for the University of South Dakota Athletic Department as the Director of Events. As John also stated, this is the third year that we're requesting to have the Dakota Street parking removed for our 5 Saturday fall football games. Biggest issue is safety of the fans that are crossing Dakota Street from our west lot here. As you can see, we have a lot of fans that will cross over Dakota Street and around the north side to come into our games. So we want to make it as safe as possible for those fans. And as John has also stated, the only parking we would allow is the visiting team buses, which park just on the east side of the foundation. UPD helps us by barricading off the Dakota Street between 50 there and Alumni Street, as well from Coyote Village, and they place some more barricades up here closer to the Sanford Coyote Sports Center. That's to help with the students that come over from Coyote Village over to the student tailgate, just for their safety as well. UPD would be responsible for the barricades. University of South Dakota Athletic Department is responsible for the cleanup. Also spoke with the Holiday Inn, as John has stated, just to confirm with them that they were okay with it again, gave me the green light. And Dr. Kim Greaves, obviously, her concern is student safety crossing, so making that aware to students that they're unable to drive through there. However, there are a lot here where housing is still available, so it does not impede on that whatsoever.
Thank you, Cameron. Questions for Cameron or John? Sure.
Cameron, with all the new apartments buildings going up, where are people going to tailgate now, or where are they going to actually park for the games?
So we do still have a little sliver here in the west lot general parking. We will have an entrance over here off from Dakota Street. So another reason why we'd like to block it off, just for the cars coming in and out, to reduce any sort of, I guess, barriers for visibility. We're also working with Ryan Bear and leasing his land over here just off from Alumni Street, with the entrance to that lot coming off from Alumni Street. And then we're also working with the university, hoping to get this to be general parking right off of Alumni Street, or not Alumni, Dakota Street as well. Whether or not that's going to be approved is still to be determined.
Further questions? Motion and second to approve the street closures. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Council.
Item C, a request to close 2 parking stalls on Main Street in front of the Varsity and Charlie's on August 17 and 18, 2018, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for Charlie's sidewalk sale. And John, please.
Thank you. With Move-In Day coming up here for USD on August 17th, and Charlie's at their current location, just east of the Varsity, they would like to have a sidewalk sale with all the new freshmen and parents and new students coming to the university. That's to help promote it and I guess clear out some merchandise perhaps before they move to their new facility. They would like to close those 2 parking stalls that kind of cover the Varsity and Charlie's there. They have been in contact. The Varsity's okay with it, obviously Charlie's and also the barbershop to the east of there have all indicated that they're aware of it. They're okay with this. It would be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on those 2 days.
Move approval.
A motion and second to approve the street closure. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, permit for consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages for local fair at the fair, sponsored by Vermillion Area Farmers Market on Friday, August 10th, 2018, from 3 to 6 p.m. at the Fairgrounds Rabbit Barn east of High Street and south of West Cherry Street. Mike, please.
Grace Freeman, on behalf of the Vermillion Area Farmers Market, has requested the permit for consumption of alcoholic beverages on public property for sampling of local wine and beer at their event called the Local Fair at the Fair, which will be Friday, August 10th from 3 to 6 p.m. in the Rabbit Building. State statute provides that the governing body of municipality may permit consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages on property owned by the public. The City Council, this would be the second year. It was approved last year, and they have not heard any comments or incidents with last year. The City Council may permit the consumption but not sale on the public property. This property is owned by the city, leased to Clay County, who subleased it to the Clay County Agricultural Fair Association. Administration would recommend approval of the permit to allow consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages for the event, the local fair at the fair, sponsored by the Vermillion Area Farmers Market on Friday, August 10th.
Brian, you want to make that note?
On the top of the subject, it says Friday, August 10th, or sorry, Friday, August 11th, 2017. Is that supposed to be Friday, August 10th, 2018?
Yes.
Okay.
And as you can see, I copied it from last year, and last year's event was the Value Added Ag Day on Friday. This year, it's the local fair at the fair event.
With all that in corrected now, any council deliberation here? A motion and a second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item E, resolution to amend city fines. John, please.
Thank you. Beginning of July 1st, the state raised the municipal court cost. For municipal fines, the court cost was $60, and unbeknownst to us, they raised it to $62.50. And so the council sets the maximum fine, and court costs are deducted from that. So when the court costs went up, the amount that the city received went down. In talking with the city attorney about addressing this matter, the idea that staff came up with was if the state was raising $250, we could raise ours $250 and make it an even $5 adjustment that way. It does still keeps us below any state fines for similar offense because the court costs for state fines are more than what they are for municipal court fines. So with that said, we prepared the attached fine resolution. The net effect is to raise these fines $5. Short of the the one for texting while driving, I cannot tell you the last time these fines were ever adjusted. The council, when they set the fine for texting while driving, was 2013, I believe. Otherwise, those numbers have been pretty constant, that as long as we can remember.
Comments, question, Tom?
John, this is, we have to do this because the state decided to raise these. So in order to pay them, we have to raise it. Is that
Revenue neutral for us, kind of.
And so that's exactly my point. So they make a little extra and we don't because we have to pay them. Is that basically what the state's doing?
Well, if you only raised the, for example, I'll just pick on the top one in the list. It says give, sell tobacco to minor, which is our code section 11204. If we wanted to make it revenue neutral, instead of that number being 125, it would be, 122.50. So what the proposal is since this, to get it back to revenue neutral, we need to go from the current 120 to 122.50, but rounding it off to an even number, we added $2.50 to the city amount as well. So that's why you have the $5 increase. So $2.50 is to keep it revenue neutral, the other $2.50 is for the city.
Pleasure of the council.
Move approval.
Motion and a second to approve the resolution adjusting fines for city code violations. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item F, Utilities Committee report. John, please.
Thank you. A lot of this you heard at a report back in June, but as I think everybody in the community's noticed, the Heights is building a large student housing complex on the west side of North Dakota Street, just across from the arena or north of what was Hollers or the Prairie there. And so long story short, they would like to have a master meter to pay their electric utility. City code requires individual meters, as does PURPA, which is a federal standard, and our own state PUC commission, which doesn't govern the city in this matter, but the regulations do call for individual meters, except they do provide an exception for dormitories. Now, this is not a dormitory as a USD dormitory, but the developer has said that is a large building, which it obviously is, 74 units, 200 plus residents, and it is student-focused. The Utilities Committee met with the developer and attempted to address their concerns and see what we could do for a large-scale student development like this. It's certainly new to our community. We made a presentation to the City Council with very similar language that the Utilities Committee recommended back in June. Following that, they did provide some additional information to us in a letter that was included in your packet. The Utilities Committee did also review that, and we made some slight changes to the ordinance to maybe help, to pull USD out of there because somebody could be living there. And in this day of online classes, they could technically be majoring or an enrolled student at another university, but taking classes here as well. So to take away a little bit of that, as well as the university signing off, because we don't ask the university to sign off on any other off-campus student housing in terms of its recognition. Then we made another change to reference that it's more dormitory-style housing than it is individual apartments. So the language presented to you in June as well as the latest proposal are both before you. The Utilities Committee reviewed that, and they did recommend that this be brought forward for council consideration. I would note that no action is needed this evening, but we'd certainly welcome the comments in anticipation of bringing back an ordinance to add 5122 subsection C, exclusive student housing, to the city code. We bring forward an ordinance to do that probably at the next meeting based on the comments received this evening.
Good.
John, I noticed in it, it also required them to, restate every year what they're doing. Why is that necessary?
I think we were, this is something that's different than what other housing that might certainly cater or be geared towards students. And so part of that was to demonstrate that they were indeed making it exclusive student housing, that they were meeting all the conditions. That was one of the criteria that, quite frankly, the developer offered to annually present that. We thought that was a fair way to continue to monitor that, to make sure that indeed it was student-focused housing, dormitory-style apartments. So, you know, we sit here and things change. We don't know about it. A couple of years go by, and then we're trying to correct something. So They were comfortable with that, and so we thought that was a good way to include that in there.
Anything else? Yes.
Two questions. First one is, do we know, I know that these kinds of buildings have actually been built in larger cities and other universities. Do we have any information about how those have been treated in other places? Is there precedent, essentially?
Well, the lucky person in the audience, no, we have, Shane did some research on that. I believe we contacted Lincoln Public Services and as well as, it's Ames Municipal Utilities, or City of Ames. A couple of those in the upper Midwest we tried to reach to see how they were doing it. We didn't find a consistent answer, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. Certainly a private electric utility, an IOU, investor-owned utility, has a lot more latitude to adjust rates, and so for those, LPS and Ames are not, but in those communities where they have a private or IOU, what they do is not as forthcoming as it is when we talk to these other cities. But we did not find a consistent way in which these setups were handled.
Okay, my second question is, what is the goal of this? What's the purpose? As I understand it, or as I can imagine, it's so that they can advertise one price and have a, with utilities included. Is that essentially the idea?
Correct, yep. That's
Billing.
that's their goal, is to advertise more of a dormitory style rate that you pay X amount per semester or per month or however they're going to do that part of it. So it's more of an all-inclusive price versus what private apartments might do.
Okay.
Julia, I think it's also important to note that they can't resell that.
Yeah, I was going to make that point, because this question's come up with other utilities and other living areas, including one of the trailer parks, where I think we decided to allow one water meter, or was it electric? I don't remember, but
The ones I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, I think we have 2 of these out there right now, and they have been mobile home parks, and they have been for water and sanitary sewer, one of them? Or, and so, you can, by state law, you can resell water. You cannot resell electricity.
okay, that's the distinction, okay. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on this? Will of the council? Well, I guess we're just receiving this, is that?
You want to accept the report or something?
Motion is second to receive the report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item G, presentation, of the proposed 2019 budget. And before you do that, could I just ask a question that in the past has worked very well, where you have sort of laid out, I haven't looked at the book, you've sort of laid out how the 2 days will be split out. So if we don't read it all before day 1, we have a clue as to which you've done before.
Absolutely, and if you just want to sit back, I'll go ahead and I'll read the book to you. No, it's, yes, to answer your question, Mayor, we're sending that schedule out tomorrow. Marty has a couple of things that we're verifying on it, but we have that schedule 99% ready. So we'll get that to you
very helpful.
Tomorrow on that part of it. So for those people watching at home, this is kind of the size of the book, roughly. Now we have this available, both paper and electronic, and I know Marty was trying a couple things this afternoon to send it out. Some of it's been kicked back because of the size of the file. I think she went to a Dropbox type approach. She had done a really nice job with an interactive table of contents, and that didn't work as well in Dropbox. But we'll continue to try to perfect that to get it. So I believe if you get electronically, everybody should have received, I think it's 3 emails that kind of have it broken up right now. But she's working diligently on that, trying to get that to you. And kudos, I guess, a couple of people here. Marty Washington, our administrative assistant, has done a very nice job. This is her first go-around of helping to put this together. Mike's role is essential. I might have the 2010 budget prepared if it was left up to me to do by myself. But through Mike's guidance and his skills, you're actually into 2019. So he does a phenomenal job of helping to get us to where we're at. Certainly our department heads give us a lot of the feedback and ideas to help develop this proposal, which we're very pleased to present to the council. And also say for the people watching at home, that the council spends a great deal of time. This is probably their largest single assignment of the year. And so they will start that, the meeting part of it on August 15th. Right now, we have 2 meetings set for the evening of August 15th and again on the 16th at 5:30. They'll go through that book pretty much almost on a page-by-page basis. With that said, I would say the proposed budget does a couple different things. We keep that discussion going, and hopefully a downtown infrastructure project, continuing to set aside the money for that, some additional park improvements, street repairs, that hike-bike path replacement along the Vermillion River, which has been a challenge to get done. It does include the addition of a police detective, which was something we've talked about for a couple of years. Budgeted that to start about July 1st. It continues our second year of AMI, which is our automated meters for electricity as well as water. It's the final year of the LED street light conversion. We would divide that project up over 4 years. The proposed budget does not include any utility rate increases for 2019. The only rate increase would be with our storm sewer fund, where annually we take a look at addressing that, and certainly with the weather we've had, that's certainly a need in this community to continue to address storm drainage that way. I would say, if you only want to spend 5 minutes in your preparations for it, there's a, I'll just call it the letter. I have other names I've called it, but the letter that we draft in the front that kind of is in a nutshell some of the things that we're looking at doing in the budget for 2019. I will say that this budget was a little bit more challenging in that our general fund revenues, which primarily come from property tax and sales tax, the first penny, were not sufficient, we felt, to be able to fund the general operations of the city. And so for the first time, we are proposing to use a little bit of second penny funds, a portion of that, to help fund our general fund operations. And I bring that up for a couple reasons. It will take a policy, that is a major policy decision of the council coming up, because in 2003, the city council adopted an ordinance that all second penny funds would be used for capital items. And so to plug some dollars into the general fund, which is allowed by state statute, this council will need to take action to allow for some of that money to go into the general fund. But we've posed that as probably one of the larger policy questions that the council will have to address as you work through this process. So there's no action needed this evening, but we look forward to spending August 15th and 16th, or answering questions you have before then, working through a budget proposal for 2019. I would note from a community standpoint, the council will do their homework, if you will, in August in developing that, and then they will actually take action via ordinance during the 2 council meetings in September to adopt that budget. And our budget year, as the council knows, is the same as the calendar year. So this is the budget that goes from January 1st to December 31st of 2019.
Thank you, John. Questions?
I would like to just make sure we say thanks for all the work, and I know it's part of your job, but especially this year, as you said, this is particularly challenging. And we have a lot of questions. So thanks to the city manager, to the city finance director, and all the staff for the work on this, because this is a major item for this city council. I've said this before. Rich is probably tired of hearing it because he sits next to me and I talk to him a lot. I believe that as we look at these things, we have a certain amount of revenue that comes in, and we have a certain mill levy, and we have the consumer price index, and we have all these factors that figure into this. But we start with what do we have for revenue and what can we do to serve our community. So to me, this is definitely a policy-making item, how we spend the taxpayers' money. So with that, I want to emphasize that these meetings next week are open to the public. Is that's and I would urge people to provide input to the council. So again, thank you very much, John.
We've actually had some people sit through them. Do we receive this, Mike?
I think usually there's a motion just to acknowledge receipt of it. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second to receive the proposed 2019 budget. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next, bid openings. Item A, wastewater treatment, digester improvement 2018. Shane, please.
Thank you. In 2014, a backup boiler was installed in the digester building at the wastewater treatment facility as phase 1 of the boiler project. Phase 2 was to consist of the replacement of the main boiler in the digester building as well as the heat exchanger. In January of 2018, council entered into an agreement with Banner and Associates for the engineering of this project. In March of 2018, came back to you guys and asked for additional work to be added to the scope of the agreement that included the cleaning of the digesters as well as some pumping and some piping improvements located in the digester building. Due to the additional work, the project was renamed to the Wastewater Treatment Facility Digester Improvements for 2018. Banner Associates did complete the engineering for the project in May of 2018, and a notice to bidders was published in June of 2018. We collected and opened bids in July 17th of 2018. There were 3 bids that we received with appropriate bid security. All 3 of the bids did include both costs for the base bid and the alternates. We totaled those costs together in the cost evaluation, and the total bids ranged from a cost of $869,000 to $873,000. The low bid was received from PKG Contracting Incorporated out of Fargo, North Dakota, in the amount of $869,000. Attached is the letter of recommendation from Banner Associates, as well as the bid tab sheet for you guys. The wastewater treatment fund has appropriate funds in place to cover these expenses. Administration, along with Banner Associates, recommends awarding both the base and the alternate bid for the wastewater treatment facility digester improvements project for 2018 to PKG Contracting Incorporated for a total cost of $869,000.
Thank you, Shane. That's an incredible close bid on
It
all 3
was,
of them.
yes, very close.
Must be pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's they all said too, is thank the engineering on that one, so.
Yeah. Comments, questions for Shane?
So given how close they are, you consider these all to be pretty equal as far as quality and workability and...
Yeah, we were pretty happy with who we got. PKG has actually worked at the treatment plant before in the past, so we know what we're getting with their workmanship. So, yep.
Other comments or questions? Motion and a second to approve the digester improvement. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Fuel quotes, Mike?
Fuel quote sheets are handed out and are on the monitor. First from Stern Oil for unleaded gasoline with 10% ethanol, $2.4566 cents. Item 2, unleaded gasoline regular, $2.6634 cents per gallon. Item 3, number 2 diesel fuel dyed, $2.40 per gallon. Number 4, number 2 diesel fuel clear, $2.70. Second quote we got was from Brunick Service on item 1, $2.48. Item 2, $2.70. Item 3, $2.43. Item 4, $2.75. Stern Oil would be low on all 4.
Motion and a second to accept the low bid. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is our manager's report. John, please.
Thank you. Just a reminder, the City Council created the Human Relations Commission as well as the Historic Preservation Commission earlier this summer, and the city is seeking individuals to apply for positions on these 2 respective commissions. If you're interested, there's an expression of interest form available at City Hall or on the city's website. We anticipate the City Council will make appointments to both of those respective commissions at the August 20th meeting. Just a couple of street closures to remind the public about. High Street from Cherry Street south to the end of the fairgrounds will be closed this Thursday the 9th through Sunday the 12th. Thursday at 7 a.m. closing until 5 p.m. on Sunday the 12th, and that is for the Clay County Fair. Plum Street will be closed on Plum Street north of Cherry Street up to 50, and then Rose Street north of Kyle Village will be closed on Friday, August 17th for the USD Move-In Day, and that is from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m., that closure. Our city engineer did approve a plat of Lot 6A, Block 6 in the Erickson Edition. That'd be property just north of Blaine's Body Shop. As was noted a little bit earlier, we do have the budget meetings coming up on August 15th and 16th at 5:30 p.m. in the large conference room. And then included in your packet were 2 raffle notifications. Phi Kappa Theta, they are selling 50/50 raffle tickets from September 17th to the 22nd as part of their fundraising for the Children's Miracle Network event that Quentin spoke about a little bit ago. The tickets will be $2 each, or 6 for $10, and the drawing will be on September 22nd. The High School Booster Club, they're selling $1 tickets. The prize is 2 tickets to the USD football game versus Northern Colorado on September 8th. The tickets include access to the mezzanine level and are valued at $50 each. And then funds from this raffle will help with the projects that the Booster Club is completing at the Veterans Sports Complex at the Vermillion High School.
Comments or questions for city manager? Thank you, John. Invoices payable, let's see if you can trick Mike into anything. Mike, on the number 72, does that finish up the project over on Prentice?
No, it doesn't. There's still some retainage for some punch list items there, dealing with the seating and sod that got so late that it was too warm to get done, that they'll hopefully get done this fall.
Any comments or questions on paying our bills?
Pay our bills.
Motion is second to pay our bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Bear with me as we go through the consensus agenda. Item A, set a public hearing date of August 20th, 2018 for a special permit to exceed permissible sound levels by no more than 50% for USD Dakota Days on Radigan Plots, portion of Market Street south of West Main Street, and portion of West Main Street abutting the plots on or about October 3, 2018 from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. for celebration of Dakota Days event with carnival and street dance. Item B, set a public hearing date of August 20th, 2018 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Area Chamber of Commerce and Development Company on or about September 28 and 29, 2018 at Radigan Plots and portions of Market and Main Street for Oktoberfest events. Item C, set a public hearing date of August 20th, 2018 for a special permit to exceed permissible sound levels for the Vermillion Area Chamber of Commerce and Development Company on or about September 28 and 29, 2018 at Radigan Plots and portions of Market and Main Street from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. for Oktoberfest events.
Move approval of the consensus agenda. Second.
A motion is second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries, Steve. Second. Motion is second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thank you.